Nostalgic America in 1965 with an 18-year-old girl and boy. I still had a summer job of delivering kegs of nuts and bolts from A&H Fasteners around Chicago to the far-flung suburbs and even to Indiana. I knew all the shortcuts, and so I often had some time left over at the end of the workday, plus I'd had lunch on the run, so I'd usually stall around somewhere in my neighborhood as a work-home transition kind of thing. I was driving past Maple Park in the company's red pickup truck when I noted a ball rolling across the road, it having come from way further over in the park. I stopped, parked, picked it up, and brought it over to where it had likely come from a bunch of kids that looked like they were related. There I discovered the two older sisters, Catherine and Trish, along with their 8 younger and assorted siblings. They had enough for a ball team unto themselves. Catherine talked with me for quite a while. They were from Forest Park, were Irish, and Catherine was to be a sophomore at another University of Illinois in Central Illinois at Urbana, and her sister Trish was to be a junior there. So they were ahead of me in school and thus had escaped my radar that couldn't see the past. I was just out of high school, a college freshman to be, plus their high school would have been Proviso East. Well, it was a wonderful talk, except for something about that they'd been sexually abused when younger by their drinking father, and their not wanting to be back here. But I had to get the truck back to work. Here's a story I wrote way later on, for a class reunion in 1990, which I didn't go to, a taste of memory. Upon arriving at St. Bernardine's Catholic Grammar School each day, I would always stop at Bill and Betty's little store, which was just across the street, and buy 2 honey-dipped donuts to eat in the classroom after Mass. This was a privilege for those saintly students who had fasted and received Holy Communion. For me, as a 6th grade boy, it was the ultimate treat, considering that the staying in one-room school day provided little other diversion until lunchtime. Oh, how delicious those donuts tasted to a growing boy who had starved since dinner the night before, fasting all night and then sitting through a seemingly never-ending Mass during which special prayers were said for nearly everyone's grandparents and sick relatives. But it was well worth the wait, for breakfast never tasted better than it did for us, the famished Holy of Holies. Imagine eating right there in school during class, without even having to sneak in the bites, such as one had to do with candy snacks later in the day during hunger attacks. And out there, cooling, on the windowsill, in all its glory, was our free chocolate milk, there only for the deserving, the healthful drink that washed down the honeyed donut. All in all, it was a morning feast truly fitting for us young Christian warriors. To get milk, one needed only to have the foresight to sign up the day before, and of course to sit through a Latin Mass, most of which time was spent either in looking over all the minute details of the person just ahead or in nudging someone's shoe or lunchbox along the floor until it had quite disappeared. Of course, to kill even more time, one could pretend to climb the wall buttresses barehanded and to maneuver among the ceiling arches, sliding down the lamp wires and such, until rudely bumped back into reality by the nun sitting behind, the nun with eagle eyes that could detect the slightest lack of attention. Or one also could look and see which of the girls had forgotten their veils by the sorry napkin and handkerchief assortment draped upon their heads. Yes, a Mass was a long and difficult time to suffer through, especially the endless periods of kneeling, but it was the tasty dreams of milk and honey donuts that carried me through. And now and then I'd catch a whiff from my donut bag of the breakfast, which everyone knew meant breaking the fast. I also had, from Bill and Betty's store, some of those penny candy sheets, the long, narrow ones with about 30 rows of 3 dots of candy across. The kind of candy that you could never seem to cleanly remove, and so you always had to ingest some of the paper lining as well. And two, some brand new packages of the latest baseball card series. I would slowly and secretly open them later in class at some boring moment, which came often, and hope against hope for a Mickey Mantle card, which everyone knew appeared but rarely. Me, I was a real collector, using my own allowance to buy the cards, not like some other kids whose mothers gave them enough money to buy an entire box of baseball card packs. Yes, all this, plus more could be had from Bill and Betty's store. It almost made going to school worthwhile. Bill and Betty were both quite old, and I can see now, looking back, why they were often crabby and impatient with all the little angels and near saints who would crowd into the store each morning to lay their pennies on the counter. But to me then, it was a kind of rare freedom to roam the store. Old Bill never said or heard very much, wearing a hearing aid and often pretending that he was deaf. But old Betty, she would always ask us what we were doing in the back of the store and yell at us to stop loitering and to either buy something or go to school. Looking longingly at the popsicles, I would move on, always remembering the time when they cost only 4 cents instead of 5, still upset at the price increase that broke my budget. Once there was a time when our teacher would bribe us each with a free popsicle just for going to communion, but the principal soon put a stop to that, after seeing the entire 6th grade class dining on popsicles day after day, probably reasoning that holiness was not something that could be bought. Yes, those were the days of luxury. Since our new 6th grade teacher was a lay teacher, not a nun, we had many such adventures. I remember one time when she marched the entire class over to my house on Sunday morning because I had missed choir and mass, since I had slept in my backyard tent with my friend and had stayed up all night and now needed my sleep. Luckily, we saw them coming, and so we went in the back door of the house and right on out the front door. And we never stopped running for blocks, although it was hard to run and laugh at the same time. Then, one week, while buying my communion breakfast, I noted that old Bill was missing behind the counter, having been replaced there by his young granddaughter, Patricia. So I asked where he might be. Sick, she told me. Very sick. But in a week or so, old Bill was back, although he was moving much slower than before, and so I started secretly staring at him. Some months later, a sign was put up in the door saying that the store would be closed for a week, and within a few days, I heard that old Bill had died, and we students, of course, lit numerous votive candles for him in church, obtaining at the same time the pleasure of playing with fire. We prayed for his salvation and were, of course, very penitent and remorseful for ever having caused him any trouble in his last days. Taking no chances, I, as always, invoked an act of contrition, so as to wipe clean my slate by gaining a plenary indulgence, which, amazingly, was said to work even for murderers. After a week without donuts, I was a nervous wreck and often had severe withdrawal pains after Mass during breakfast time, but survived somehow on some Hostess cupcakes and some imitation donuts that my mother bought at the supermarket. But these donuts just weren't the same. The store reopened as scheduled, old Betty running it alone. As I prepared for school that morning, I brought extra money for a special treat. Some of those wax bottles that contained, as now I see it, mere colored water. But then, as I thought as a boy, some sort of elixir of the gods. I bought donuts too, and I swear to this day that there has never been a better donut made. Probably because back then, the neighborhood bakeries made them fresh at 4 a.m. without preservatives. Many years have passed between this and then, and through those years my tastes have somehow strayed away from donuts to more exotic foods, even to fruits and vegetables. And so it was that I had long forgotten about the old school store until just recently, when I found myself at Dunkin' Donuts ordering a freshly baked, honey-dipped donut. As I bit into one, the taste of my grammar school memories came rushing back. All of them apparently contained right there inside of that donut, and I have so written them down just as they came to me. So there I was, stopped, and sitting still on my motorcycle in front of the little store. Did I really need to go around to the side or the back and go up there to meet some strange Irish father? A little kid came over after a bit. I recognized him from the park.
Hey kid, can you go tell Catherine I'm here?
The kid didn't say anything, but he quickly ran off and around the side of the building. Catherine came out and hopped on.
Quick, go. My mother doesn't want me riding on these things.
I motorcycled to the far end of Forest Park, which was just down a ways after the big swimming pool where there was a park just before Maywood. She had been holding on for dear life.
I've never been on one of these. Exciting?
Yeah, with the rumbling, the vibrations, and the air rushing by. What can I do for you, ma'am?
It's like I'm on vacation right here in my own hometown.
Enjoying it?
Not really. I've been free and now I'm not so much.
I'm kind of on vacation too between high school and college. My last hurrah.
But you work.
Yeah, I drive all over the place, from strange Chicago warehouses to a nowhere land way out the other way. But not every day. More like every other day on average.
Can I come with sometimes?
Sure. I can pick you up around 9 or 9:30 tomorrow. There's an extra run this week. I have to load the truck first. You're really bored, aren't you?
That's for sure, and at college too, but it's great compared to living back here.
You're very good looking.
So maybe the boys are scared of me.
I'm not scared, and those boys will come around eventually.
I'm only here for the summer and the school breaks.
Life still has to get lived.
Okay.
Sure. Ice cream? We walked over to a stand at the edge of the park. Another rerun, I thought, but a good one. We sat down to eat, all because I had picked up a ball. We stood up, looking face to face. Somehow a kiss happened. She rode with me on my truck route several days a week. She turned out to be even better than I'd expected, on a par with the best, minus the literary aspect. Soon her older sister Trish rode with us too, and then Trish began kissing me too. Two girlfriends at once. Fate was overflowing my cup. I had a really old van that I'd secretly bought, although I didn't really need it. Plus, I always had to add oil to it. Nor did I drive it much, for I didn't want to have to pay the insurance on it, but perhaps I would in the winter. So it just sat near an auto repair place. I only had to pay $5 rent a month to have it parked there, which was a steal. I camped in there sometimes. Dan Maltese carpeted it, and I fixed up the back of it some more. And so now we had a love retreat on the nights that were not too warm. Well, this was a part of what summer was for, and it was my last one before college. I would probably have to get additional jobs in the summers to come. Life was going to become extra serious. Soon Catherine's sister Trish came to the van with us too, making for a romantic threesome. What was I doing? Well, it wasn't illegal or anything. It was just unusual. The summer was soon halfway through. I would have married Catherine, I suppose, and she me if possible, with some more time to consider it, perhaps, in our transient haze of the moment. Or someday if the locales and the ages and the times had been a bit different in some other reality. But here, and in between, we'd be in different universities. That arrangement would be prone to failure. There was still a lot of life to be lived at both ends. No complaints, though. It didn't fail, though, and it would go on several years through college until I graduated college and took a job at IBM. Another book, a loving long one, but the Army eventually took me. Summer ended. They headed back to school, which was hundreds of miles away. I put all their stuff in the van and drove them. We unloaded and then camped for a day, waiting for the dorms to open. On the way back, the van blew its engine. Oh well, it was old. I hitchhiked back to Chicago and then took a transit train. I began college at the University of Illinois Circle campus, majoring in information engineering in the field of computer science. Vietnam would have to wait. I would be 18 soon. It was September 1965. I was really alone now, for everyone commuted to this university and then went home. Plus, there were but a few women in my engineering and science classes, and they looked and acted like they ate circuits for breakfast. It didn't look like anything new romantically was going to happen, and it didn't, nor did it matter, for I had to apply myself. There were still the sporadic visits from Penny and the Kennedy sister to tide me over. My glory days appeared to be over. I had to study hard and work too. The whole College of Engineering was sterile. I got to run computer programs on one of the first mainframes. I learned calculus and other great things. I joined a fraternity. They were a bunch of drunks. I gave it up. My real love was the liberal arts, but they would not likely pay the bills in life, so they had to be pursued on a personal basis. They put on the back burner too. In a feat of artistry, I managed to arrange all my courses to be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which gave me Tuesdays and Thursdays off to drive a truck around, but for some science labs that I didn't go to. Nothing fell from the sky onto me but rain, and then leaves, followed by snow. I had no local romantic life, and winter had come on early and hard, but it seemed I'd had enough memories for a lifetime. I applied myself in school, for that had to be done to get off to a good start. Anyone good would have to find me, as it had happened the last 2 times, with Joanne, or by accident, as with Catherine. The winter was cold. I learned assembler language and PL1, which was a high-level language along with file systems, searches, sorts, and other numerical analyses. I liked it. I had aptitude for it. I'd taken a Fortran course in high school, and now Fortran was even on its way out. Catherine wrote me a letter in early December. It was full of sorries. They wouldn't be coming back for the month-long winter break. Well, I'd known that. It was either because of their father, or because they'd obtained boyfriends, or both. Well, all in all, I'd been blessed again. I'd turned 18, and so I had to register with the draft board. And then the year turned to 1966. I had a college draft deferment. My draft lottery number was 106. Surely they would get to that number if the war was still going on when I graduated, although I might get through 6 months or more thereafter. These numbers went from 1 to 365, the days of the year. One of my friends had number 363, and so he was as safe as he could be. No use worrying about it, though. Life had already gotten more serious from college. For now, though, I was partway through the winter break. Nothing came my way but more snow. Only icicles tried to fall on me. I worked on some computer programming functions that would allow me to program at an even higher level, these obviating any low-level errors that could have crept in. Some of my friends were already getting drafted into the Army. Not a good time to go, I thought. My school break was now about halfway through. More snow was forecast for the evening. Well, nothing to do but stay home. Not a thing was going to happen, just like during the last 4 months, much less a miracle. I had gotten used to it. It also seemed important that I not be with anyone at this time, for I had a hope fluttering around with the butterflies in my empty heart.